Long before the world knew the name Marilyn Monroe, there was only a quiet young girl who lived a life that was very different from the glamorous world she would later enter. She was not born into fame. She was not born into wealth. In fact, her early life was full of loneliness, uncertainty, and emotional pain. Many people believe that the sadness she felt as a child never completely disappeared, even when she became one of the most famous women in the world. But history had already chosen her. Because one day, she would become a name that the entire world would remember forever. The rise of a Hollywood legend. When Marilyn Monroe entered Hollywood, nobody expected her to become a global icon. At first, she was only another young woman trying to survive in a difficult industry where thousands of people were competing for success. But something about her was different. Her smile felt real. Her personality felt warm. And her presence in front of the camera was something people could not ignore. Slowly, her name started appearing in magazines. Then newspapers. Then movie posters. And before the world even realized what was happening, Marilyn Monroe had become the most talked about woman in Hollywood. The fame that changed everything. By the late 1950s, Marilyn Monroe was no longer only a movie star. She had become a symbol of beauty, fame, and glamour. Millions of people loved her. Millions admired her. And millions believed her life was perfect. But the truth was very different. Behind the cameras, she was facing pressure that most people could never understand. Every mistake became news. Every private moment became public. Every decision she made was judged by the entire world. And slowly, the pressure began to change her life. One of the most emotional parts of the story of Marilyn Monroe is this. Millions of people loved her, but very few people truly understood her. She was surrounded by photographers, journalists, and powerful people in Hollywood. But that did not mean she felt safe. In fact, some people believe she felt more alone after becoming famous than she had ever felt before. And that is what makes her story more than just a celebrity story. It becomes a story about pressure, loneliness, and fear. The city where the mystery began. The story of Marilyn Monroe cannot be separated from one city. Los Angeles. This was the city where she became famous. The city where she became a legend. And the city where one of the biggest mysteries in Hollywood history would begin. Because the same city that gave her fame would also become the place where the world would lose her forever. The final years that changed the story. In the early 1960s, something began to feel different in the life of Marilyn Monroe. The pressure had become stronger. The media attention had become more intense. And the people around her were no longer the same as before. Many people later said that the final years of her life felt darker, quieter, and more mysterious. Some believed she was under pressure. Some believed she knew secrets that were never meant to be public. And some believed the truth behind her life was very different from what the world saw. On August 5, 1962, the world woke up to shocking news. Marilyn Monroe had died in Los Angeles. The official report said it was suicide. But millions of people around the world did not believe that story completely. Too many questions remained unanswered. Too many details felt strange. And too many people believed something had never been fully explained. And that is where the real mystery begins. By the early 1960s, the life of Marilyn Monroe no longer looked like a dream. From the outside, she was still the most famous woman in Hollywood. Magazines still printed her photos. Fans still loved her. Producers still wanted to work with her. But inside her life, something had changed. The pressure had become heavier. The attention had become more intense. And the people around her were no longer the same as before. Some people later said that the final years of her life felt quiet, emotional, and full of fear. Because fame can give everything, but it can also take everything away. The people around her were changing. One of the biggest mysteries in the story of Marilyn Monroe is not only her death, it is the people who were around her in the final months of her life. She was surrounded by powerful personalities, influential figures, and people who had connections that most ordinary people could never imagine. Some believed she trusted too many people. Some believed she trusted the wrong people. And some believed she knew things that were never meant to be public. Whether these ideas are true or not, one thing is certain: the final months of her life were not peaceful. The city that never let her feel alone. The story continues in only one place. Los Angeles. This was the city where she became a legend. But it was also the city where she could never escape the cameras, the media, and the constant pressure of being the most famous woman in Hollywood. Even when she tried to live a quiet life, the world refused to leave her alone. Journalists wanted stories. Photographers wanted pictures. And fans wanted to know everything about her personal life. Slowly, the life that once looked beautiful began to feel dangerous. In the final weeks before Marilyn Monroe died, many people later said something did not feel normal. Some believed she looked tired. Some believed she looked emotional. Some believed she looked worried. Nobody knew exactly what she was feeling. But many people agreed on one thing. The happiness the world saw on the outside was not the same happiness she felt inside. And that is what makes her story one of the most emotional stories in Hollywood history. The night before the tragedy. On the night before the world lost Marilyn Monroe, nobody imagined it would be her final night. To the world, she was still a star. Still a legend. Still the most famous woman in Hollywood. But history had already decided something else. Because within a few hours, everything would change. The world would wake up to a shocking headline. Hollywood would lose its biggest icon. And one of the greatest mysteries in entertainment history would begin. A death that shocked the entire world. On August 5, 1962, the world woke up to tragic news. Marilyn Monroe had died in Los Angeles. The official report said it was suicide. But millions of people around the world did not believe that story completely. Too many questions remained unanswered. Too many details felt strange. And too many people believed something had never been fully explained. And that is where the real mystery becomes deeper. On the morning of August 5, 1962, the entire world was shocked. News spread quickly that Marilyn Monroe had died in Los Angeles. At first, people believed it was simply a tragic death of a famous actress. But within a few hours, journalists, investigators, and millions of fans began asking questions. Because something about the story did not feel simple. And that is where the mystery truly began. The investigation begins. Police started investigating the death of Marilyn Monroe. At first, the official explanation was clear: suicide. But as investigators began looking deeper into the case, small details started creating confusion. Some reports did not match each other. Some timelines did not feel completely clear. And some people believed important details were never fully explained. This is why the death of Marilyn Monroe is still discussed even today. The city where the mystery grew. Everything happened in one place. Los Angeles. This city had created the biggest stars in Hollywood. But it had also created some of the biggest mysteries. When the news about Marilyn Monroe spread, people in Hollywood were shocked, but many people also felt that something was not being fully explained. Some believed the truth was hidden. Some believed powerful people were involved. And some believed the official story was only a small part of the real story. On the morning of August 5, 1962, the entire world was shocked. News spread quickly that Marilyn Monroe had died in Los Angeles. At first, people believed it was simply a tragic death of a famous actress. But within a few hours, journalists, investigators, and millions of fans began asking questions. Because something about the story did not feel simple. And that is where the mystery truly began. The investigation begins. Police started investigating the death of Marilyn Monroe. At first, the official explanation was clear: suicide. But as investigators began looking deeper into the case, small details started creating confusion. Some reports did not match each other. Some timelines did not feel completely clear. And some people believed important details were never fully explained. This is why the death of Marilyn Monroe is still discussed even today. The city where the mystery grew. Everything happened in one place. Los Angeles. This city had created the biggest stars in Hollywood. But it had also created some of the biggest mysteries. When the news about Marilyn Monroe spread, people in Hollywood were shocked, but many people also felt that something was not being fully explained. Some believed the truth was hidden. Some believed powerful people were involved. And some believed the official story was only a small part of the real story. After the death of Marilyn Monroe, many theories began spreading around the world. Even today, people continue discussing these theories because the story still feels incomplete. Some believed it was a tragic suicide caused by pressure and loneliness. Some believed it was an accident that was later explained as suicide. And some believed there were secrets that were never revealed to the public. No matter which theory people believe, one thing is certain. The death of Marilyn Monroe became one of the biggest mysteries in entertainment history. Why this case still feels unfinished. Most celebrity stories are forgotten after a few years. But the story of Marilyn Monroe never disappeared. People still search her name. People still watch documentaries about her life. People still try to understand what really happened in Los Angeles on that night in 1962. Because the story is not only about fame. It is about pressure, loneliness, and the dark side of Hollywood. The mystery was bigger than anyone thought. At first, it looked like a tragic but simple story. But the more people learned about the life of Marilyn Monroe, the more the mystery became deeper. Her life had powerful people. Her life had emotional struggles. And her final days had many unanswered questions. And that is why the world still remembers her not only as a movie star, but also as one of the greatest mysteries in Hollywood history. The world believed that Marilyn Monroe had the perfect life. She was famous. She was admired. Millions of people loved her. Every magazine wanted her photo. Every director wanted her in their movie. But the truth was very different. Behind the smile that the world loved, there was a life full of emotional pressure. Fame had given her everything, but it had also taken away something very important, peace. Many people later said that the life of Marilyn Monroe was not as beautiful as it looked from the outside. The dark side of Hollywood. One of the biggest reasons why the story of Marilyn Monroe feels so emotional is because it shows the darker side of Hollywood. Fame can be beautiful, but it can also be dangerous. When a person becomes too famous, every small mistake becomes news. Every private moment becomes public. Every emotional struggle becomes a headline. And this is exactly what happened to Marilyn Monroe in Los Angeles. A life surrounded by cameras. The life of Marilyn Monroe was never truly private. Cameras followed her everywhere. Journalists wrote about her personal life. People discussed her relationships more than her work. This constant attention slowly began to affect her emotional life. Many people believe that she did not feel safe anymore. Some believe she felt alone even when she was surrounded by thousands of people. And this is what makes her story one of the most emotional stories in Hollywood history. In the final years of her life, something changed in the life of Marilyn Monroe. She was still famous, but the happiness that people saw in her photos did not feel the same anymore. Many people later said that she looked tired. Some said she looked emotional. Some believed she was under pressure that the world could not see. And slowly, the story of a famous actress started becoming the story of a lonely woman trying to survive the pressure of fame. The city that gave fame, and took peace away. Everything in the life of Marilyn Monroe happened in one city. Los Angeles. This city gave her fame. This city gave her success. But this city also took away her peace, her privacy, and finally her life. That is why many people believe her story is not only about fame, it is about the price of fame. Why the world still remembers her. Many celebrities become famous and then disappear from history. But the story of Marilyn Monroe never disappeared. Even today, people watch documentaries about her life. People search her name. People try to understand what really happened in Los Angeles in 1962. Because her story is not only a celebrity story. It is a story about emotions, pressure, loneliness, and the truth behind fame. Even after so many years, the world still wants to know what really happened to Marilyn Monroe in Los Angeles. The official story was simple. But the emotions, the questions, and the confusion around her death were never simple. Millions of fans believed that such a powerful and famous woman could not disappear in such a mysterious way. That is why the story of Marilyn Monroe never ended, it only became deeper. A story that turned into a legend. At first, it was a tragic story of a famous actress. But slowly, it became something much bigger, a legend. People around the world began discussing the mystery of Marilyn Monroe again and again. Some believed the truth was hidden. Some believed her life was much more complicated than the world knew. And some believed that the real story of Marilyn Monroe was never fully told. The city where everything changed forever. Everything in her story comes back to one place. Los Angeles. This city made her the most famous woman in Hollywood. This city gave her success. But this city also became the place where her story turned into one of the biggest mysteries in entertainment history. Even today, people visit Los Angeles and remember the life of Marilyn Monroe. Because legends never disappear, the story of Marilyn Monroe is not only about fame, beauty, or success. It is also about pressure, loneliness, and the price of being the most famous woman in the world. That is why people still feel emotional when they hear her story. Even today, millions of fans believe she deserved a happier life. And that is why her story feels more like a mystery than a simple tragedy. The story of Marilyn Monroe has everything that makes a powerful YouTube documentary. A famous personality. A mysterious death. Emotional life story. Unanswered questions. And a story that people still want to understand today. That is why this story never becomes old. It only becomes more interesting with time. The story does not end here. Even though the world lost Marilyn Monroe in 1962, her story never truly ended. Because every year, new people discover her life. Every year, new viewers watch documentaries about her. Every year, new fans want to know what really happened in Los Angeles. And that is what makes her story timeless. The story of Marilyn Monroe has everything that makes a powerful YouTube documentary. A famous personality. A mysterious death. Emotional life story. Unanswered questions. And a story that people still want to understand today. That is why this story never becomes old. It only becomes more interesting with time. The story does not end here. Even though the world lost Marilyn Monroe in 1962, her story never truly ended. Because every year, new people discover her life. Every year, new viewers watch documentaries about her. Every year, new fans want to know what really happened in Los Angeles. And that is what makes her story timeless. Even today, the life of Marilyn Monroe does not feel like a normal celebrity story. Most famous personalities are remembered for their movies, their success, and their achievements. But in the case of Marilyn Monroe, people remember something else too, mystery. Many fans believe there were secrets in her life that the world never fully understood. Some believe those secrets were connected to the pressure of fame. Some believe they were connected to the powerful people around her. And some believe the truth was much deeper than anyone imagined. The fame that became a trap. At the beginning of her career, fame looked beautiful for Marilyn Monroe. She became famous very quickly. She became loved by millions of people. She became one of the most talked about women in the world. But slowly, fame started changing her life. The cameras never stopped following her. Journalists never stopped writing about her. People never stopped talking about her personal life. And this constant pressure slowly turned fame into something that felt like a trap. That is why many people believe her story is not only about success, it is about the price of success. The city where everything became complicated. The life of Marilyn Monroe was strongly connected to only one city. Los Angeles. This was the city where she became a star. But this was also the city where her life became more complicated, more emotional, and more mysterious. Even today, when people talk about her life, they always return to Los Angeles, because that is where everything happened. Many celebrity stories disappear after a few years. But the story of Marilyn Monroe never disappeared. People still search her name. People still watch documentaries about her life. People still try to understand what really happened in Los Angeles in 1962. Because the story still feels unfinished. Why the world still feels emotional about her story. The story of Marilyn Monroe is not only a mystery story. It is also an emotional story. Many celebrity stories disappear after a few years. But the story of Marilyn Monroe never disappeared. People still search her name. People still watch documentaries about her life. People still try to understand what really happened in Los Angeles in 1962. Because the story still feels unfinished. Why the world still feels emotional about her story. The story of Marilyn Monroe is not only a mystery story. It is also an emotional story. It shows how fame can change a person's life. It shows how pressure can affect even the strongest people. That is why millions of fans still feel emotional when they hear her story. Even today, people believe she deserved a happier life. And that is what makes her story timeless. Millions of people loved Marilyn Monroe. She was admired everywhere. Her photos were in magazines. Her name was known across the world. She became the face of Hollywood. But even with all this love, many people believe she was never truly understood. Some saw her as a movie star. Some saw her as a beautiful woman. But very few people tried to understand her emotional life. That is why the story of Marilyn Monroe still feels emotional even today. The fame that became too heavy. At the beginning, fame gave everything to Marilyn Monroe: success, money, recognition, and love from millions of fans. But slowly, that same fame became too heavy. Every interview was analyzed. Every photograph was discussed. Every relationship became news. And slowly, her private life disappeared completely. Many people believe this constant pressure slowly changed her life and made everything more complicated. The city that created a legend. Everything in the life of Marilyn Monroe comes back to one place. Los Angeles. This city created her success. This city gave her fame. But this city also created the mystery that people still talk about today. Even now, when people remember her life, they always remember what happened in Los Angeles in 1962. There have been many famous celebrities in history. But the story of Marilyn Monroe still feels different. Because it is not only a success story. It is not only a celebrity story. It is also a mystery story. People still want to know what really happened. People still believe that her story has more truth hidden inside it. And that is why her story never becomes old. The mystery that made her story immortal. Some stories disappear after a few years. But the story of Marilyn Monroe became immortal. Even after so many years, people still watch documentaries about her. People still search her name online. People still talk about her life and her mysterious death in Los Angeles. Because the mystery never truly ended. Many people believe that the story of Marilyn Monroe ended in 1962. But in reality, her story never truly ended. Because some stories are not only about a person, they are about emotions, mystery, and the truth that the world still wants to understand. Even today, millions of people around the world still search the name of Marilyn Monroe and try to understand what really happened in Los Angeles. Fame can make a person powerful, but it can also make a person lonely. The life of Marilyn Monroe shows something very important. Fame can make a person powerful, but it can also make a person lonely. From the outside, her life looked perfect. She was famous. She was admired. She was one of the most recognized women in the world. But inside, many people believe her life was full of emotional pressure. And that pressure slowly became stronger than her success. That is why her story still feels emotional even today. The city that changed everything. Everything in her life comes back to one place. Los Angeles. This city gave her fame. This city gave her success. But this city also became the place where her story turned into one of the biggest mysteries in entertainment history. Even today, people visit Los Angeles and remember the life of Marilyn Monroe. Why her story still feels emotional to millions of people. There are many celebrities in the world. But the story of Marilyn Monroe feels different. Because it is not only a celebrity story. It is also a human story. It is a story about pressure, emotions, loneliness, and the price of fame. That is why millions of people still feel emotional when they hear her story. Even today, her story feels real. Some famous people disappear from history after a few years. But the story of Marilyn Monroe never disappeared. Every year, new people discover her story. Every year, new viewers watch documentaries about her. Every year, new fans try to understand what really happened in Los Angeles. Because legends never disappear. The ending that still feels like a question. The story of Marilyn Monroe does not feel like a normal ending. Instead, it feels like a question that the world is still trying to answer. What really happened? Why did such a famous woman feel so alone? Why does her story still feel unfinished? And maybe that is why the world still remembers her. There are many famous nights in history. But one night in Los Angeles in 1962 became one of the most talked about nights in the world. That night was connected to only one name. Marilyn Monroe. Even after so many years, people still talk about what happened that night. Some believe it was only a tragic ending. Some believe there was something deeper behind it. And that is why the story never truly ended. Fame, power, and the pressure nobody could see. From the outside, the life of Marilyn Monroe looked perfect. She was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. She was admired by millions of people. She was known across the world. But inside, many people believed she was living under emotional pressure that nobody could fully understand. Fame can make a person powerful. But sometimes it can also make a person feel completely alone. And that is what makes her story so emotional even today. Why her story still feels different from other celebrity stories. Many celebrities become famous and then slowly disappear from history. But the story of Marilyn Monroe is still discussed everywhere. People still search her name. People still watch documentaries about her life. People still try to understand what really happened in Los Angeles in 1962. Because the mystery still feels unfinished. The truth that the world still wants to know. The most emotional part of this story is not only her fame or her success. It is the truth that the world still wants to know. Many fans believe there were things that the public never fully understood. Many people believe there were secrets that were never clearly explained. That is why the story of Marilyn Monroe still feels powerful even today. A story that became a legend. Some stories disappear after a few years. But this story became a legend. The name Marilyn Monroe is still one of the most famous names in the world. Even after decades, people still remember her, still talk about her, and still feel emotional when they hear her story. Because some stories never truly end. The final thought. The story of Marilyn Monroe is not only a celebrity story. It is a story about fame. It is a story about pressure. It is a story about mystery. And most of all, it is a story that still feels unfinished. And maybe that is why the world will never stop talking about her. The story of Marilyn Monroe is not just about fame or movies anymore. It became something much bigger than that. It became a story about how success can change a life. It became a story about how fame can sometimes become too heavy. And it became a story that people still talk about even today. That is why her life is still remembered in Los Angeles and across the world. Why her name still feels powerful today. Many celebrities become famous and then disappear from history. But the name of Marilyn Monroe never disappeared. Every year, millions of people still search her name. Every year, new viewers watch documentaries about her life. Every year, new fans discover her story for the first time. Because her story feels emotional, mysterious, and unforgettable. The mystery that never truly ended. The most powerful part of her story is not only her success. It is the mystery that never truly ended. The night connected to the death of Marilyn Monroe still feels unanswered to many people. Some believe it was a tragic ending. Some believe there were hidden secrets. And some believe the truth was never completely explained. That is why her story still feels unfinished even today. A legend that became immortal. Some stories disappear with time. But the story of Marilyn Monroe became immortal. Her name is still remembered. Her photos are still famous. Her life is still discussed in Los Angeles and around the world. Because legends never truly disappear. The story of Marilyn Monroe teaches something very important. It shows that fame does not always mean happiness. It shows that success does not always mean peace. And it shows that sometimes the most famous people can also feel the most alone. That is why her story still feels emotional even after so many years. The final message. The life of Marilyn Monroe will always remain one of the most emotional and mysterious celebrity stories in history. Her story did not end in 1962. Her story continues every time someone searches her name. Her story continues every time someone watches a documentary about her life. Her story continues every time someone remembers her. And maybe that is why the world will never forget her.